Hi, and thanks for joining us on our short today that is about the different faces of alcoholism. So, alcoholism is a really scary word that comes with a lot of stigma and judgment and shame and guilt. And so there is this big umbrella of what we don't talk about with alcoholism. And what I've discovered over the years is that the most scary thing about alcoholism is that it's one of the most difficult addictions, in my opinion, to treat for one very simple reason. It comes in so many different forms, okay? So alcoholism is something that is not like a one-size-fits-all. The stories from people suffering in their addiction is not consistent across the board. When you talk about drugs like heroin or crack or methamphetamines, quite often the stories of people's addictions have many similarities, and there's a lot of predictability on where that road can take you. But when we talk about alcoholism, that's not the case. And so it is really difficult to treat when you have people who have a million different ideas of what alcoholism actually is and what the definition about it is. Okay, so let's talk about the things that you probably already know. The things you already know is that alcohol is hard to treat because it's legal, it is socially acceptable, and it's everywhere, right? So, you know, you are talking about something that you're asking somebody to stay away from it, but pretty much anywhere and everywhere they go, alcohol is involved as a social outlet. So that's the things that you already know about it. So let's kind of move on to the things you don't know then. So quite a few years ago, I used to teach a early intervention course for addiction and alcoholism. And the first question I would always ask of all, and most of these were very young, 20-something, late high school, early college students, that's usually where their age ranges were. It was a first offenders program, people who didn't have a whole lot of history with substances but made some poor choices as a result of using drugs and alcohol. And so the first question I would always ask is, what does alcoholism look like? And pretty much all the time, the answer that I received was someone who drank all day, every day, someone who was living under the bridge with his alcohol in his or her brown paper bag, someone that was completely dysfunctional in their life, someone who had burned bridges with all of their family and friends and was, the stereotypical homeless person on the street. And so that's where the answers would lead me. And this is where we start from. This is what our society actually believes based on either general misconception, social media, mainstream media. I can't exactly say where all of it comes from, because certainly all of us are raised in different households in different parts of the country and, with different cultures. But across the board, that is the most common answer of what alcoholism looked like. So, to be honest, there is a form of alcoholism that does look like that. I mean, that is a form of it, and that people do burn bridges and can't pay their bills, and they do become homeless, and they do have their brown paper bag with their alcohol in it, and that is some people, but it's definitely not most people who suffer from alcoholism. And so I want to talk today a little bit about what the different types of alcoholism are, because when we're talking about the people that you love, there might be all these red flags that tell you this seems problematic and this seems problematic and I'm a little worried about this, but they're not dysfunctional. And so they must not have a problem with alcohol if they're not dysfunctional in their life, because they're not meeting the stereotypical, driven definition of what alcoholism is supposed to be. So that is one version of it, and I don't know that I need to talk about it because I feel like society does that for us. But there are two other forms of alcoholism that I really want to talk about that I think is so important that people understand and know what to look for and realize the severity and the dangers of it. And the first one is binge drinking. So binge drinking can, yes, be alcoholism. They can meet the criteria for a severe substance use disorder if they are binge drinking. And here's how that happens. So you have someone who might only drink let's say once a month. They go out with their friends, or they go to a family party, or they go to a work event, or, you know, they're in college, or whatever the case might be. If they're in college, they're probably drinking a little more than once a month, but you kind of get the point. They're not drinking all day, every day. And so when they go out, they drink to excess. And these are people who will go out and say, oh, I'm just going to have one or two. I'm going to call an early night. I'm going to watch what I drink. But pretty consistently across the board, every time they go out and drink, they can't stop. They can't keep to the minimum amount of alcohol that they have planned to use. And so many of these people will get to a point of blackout, which will be another short for you coming soon, but we won't talk about blackouts in length today. But many of these people will get to a point of blackouts. And even if they don't black out, they get to a level of intoxication that can have extremely severe circumstances. And so there can be circumstances that, you know, lots of people have told me, I only drink once a month, but, you know, every time I drink, I get in a bar fight, and I've been arrested a couple times, and it's costing me a lot of money, and I can't seem to control my anger when I binge drink. Well, they probably don't use the definition binge drink, but when I go out and drink. And so there are consequences that way. Another, you know, example can be people getting DUIs. Many people who, in their sobriety state, most of the month say, I would never drink and drive. I would never get behind the wheel of a car. I would never do that to myself or anybody else. But they do. They get to a point of intoxication where they might get behind the wheel of a car, or they might be very angry or abusive towards their loved ones. Or I've even had a circumstance where I had a woman who unknowingly left her children unattended in the home, and she was not a huge drinker. She only drank once a month, but when she did, it was to excess. And so we have to ask ourselves, even if my loved one is not drinking all day, every day, or even multiple times a week, or even multiple times a month, when they go out, do they always drink more than they intend to? And are there severe consequences to that drinking, or potentially severe consequences to that drinking? And so that can be something that can help you to understand, you know, this is what's causing a dysfunction in our life. You know, anytime symptoms of any disorder cause dysfunction in our life, that's when we know that they are getting into the area of disorder. A disorder causes disorder in our lives. And so you want to just sit back and say, it's only once a month, or it's only however frequently, but is it enough that it causes problems in their lives or in our lives when they do it? And then, of course, there's always the possibility, even binge drinking can cause severe effects on the body. And so there's a potential for that. Like if you have diabetes, you definitely should be not drinking, and you definitely should not be drinking in excess. So that could have a harmful side effect. Or if they're taking medications that they should not be drinking alcohol with, that can be a possible potential consequence to their binge drinking, and just a whole host of things that can go wrong. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that is there a huge potential for risk, or has there been risk, or has there been consequences, and is it starting to cause any kind of dysfunction or disorder in their lives? The last type of alcoholism that I want to discuss, which is maybe arguably the scariest form of alcoholism, is for what society would consider a functional alcoholic. And these are people who do drink a pretty significant amount of time in their life, maybe not all day, every day, but certainly more than the binge drinker who's sporadic. But even within their substance use, they are able to pay their bills, go to work, you know, follow through with normal functions of life that are required in adulthood. And so it's so detrimental because it allows for so much denial and so much justification. You know, if you're a wife or a mother or, you know, even a child of someone who is suffering from alcoholism, it's so easy to say, but they go to work every day, they pay the bills, they take care of this, they take care of that, you know, they're able to do all of these things, so therefore it must not be a problem. but it doesn't allow for there to be room to really process or acknowledge or work through the other consequences that come with the functional drinker. And so there's many different versions of what functional alcoholism can look like. For some people, it can be they become abusive, verbally abusive or physically abusive while they're under the influence of alcohol. For some people, it can just be completely withdrawn, and in some cases, if you're raising children or if you're in a relationship, it can just cause you to be emotionally neglectful and unavailable. It can be the fact that even though they're functioning, they know that their body has suffered physical consequences due to them drinking alcohol, and they are aware of this by a doctor, and they continue to harm their body. And so there are actually many clients over the years who have talked to him. They would say, my family knew I was dying. They knew I was killing myself with the alcohol, but because I was going every day to work and paying the bills, they didn't see a problem with that. They thought I was still okay, even though they knew my body was not handling the alcohol well. And so there are all these ways to say my loved one doesn't have a problem, and there's a million reasons to say why we shouldn't confront the issue or talk about the issue or try to find a way to heal the family. But just because a person is functioning in A, B, C, and D of their life doesn't mean the rest of the alphabet is struggling and needs some work. And there's so many people that are affected by the daily functioning of alcohol use that not only is the using person not able to heal, but you as a loved one are not able to heal. And if you're an adult child of an alcoholic, you know what I'm talking about. You know about the hidden secrets that the family doesn't talk about, and you know about the enabling and the justifying and the denial, because you were living in silence of this addiction that was taking over the whole family, but it was okay because A, B, and C were taken care of. So we want to make sure that when we're talking about healing a family or trying to take care of addiction, that we're not just focusing on A, B, and C, because there's all these factors in life that need to be addressed that help you to be healthy and whole within yourself and within a relationship. And so I wanted to just really talk about these three different types of alcoholism, because we have the obvious struggler who everybody says they have a problem. We know they have a problem. If they don't want to help themselves, we're not going to help them. Setting boundaries, setting limits, everything you learn and everything you will learn through our other psychoeducation courses. But when we talk about the functional user, so scary and so hard to treat, especially with a legal drug and with a socially acceptable drug. And then when we talk about the binge drinker, there's even more that can be missed because it's so sporadic. It's not even as frequent as the functional user. And so we have to remember that alcoholism does not just come in one form. It does not just look like that guy or that woman under the bridge who burned all of their bridges in life, who is homeless, who didn't pay their bills, who is completely dysfunctional as a person. Alcohol does not completely disable everybody. However, that doesn't mean it doesn't disable portions of your life. And if it's starting to disable any portion of your life, that's when you as the loved one want to at least work on some ways, even if your loved one is not willing to get sober, for you to understand, I have to work on the self-awareness. Maybe I need to get some counseling to process this better. Maybe I need to find ways to work through this addiction if I need him to pay the bills or her to pay the bills, or, I have to find a way to raise my children, even with the alcoholism in the house, in a way that's best for them and healthiest for them, if it's possible. So for you to have this awareness as a loved one, that helps you to navigate the illness better and easier, not perfectly and not stress-free and not easily, but better and less stressful. And so there are many times that you're going to notice this before the person who's struggling notices it, or before the person who's struggling is willing to acknowledge it. And so I hope today that by giving you this information, I'm empowering you to look a little bit outside the box, notice some red flags, try to identify, is alcohol causing a dysfunction and a disorder in our lives or in their lives in some way? And is there something within my power that I can do to either help myself, help the people around me, if I have children, even if the person using is not ready yet, that doesn't mean you don't have to heal. You can heal even if they're not ready yet. But I want you to know what you're healing from, and I want you to be able to recognize it and not wait for them to be that homeless person under the bridge so that you can say now they have a problem, because the problem happens so much sooner than that. And you can heal so much sooner than that, regardless of whether they are ready to or not. And so I hope you feel empowered. I hope this helps you, and I will see you at our next educational short. And thank you for joining us.